Hello, hello. Oh, some of you beautiful faces and some of your names. It's so good to see everyone here. If you can and you're available to, please turn your camera on so you can be in the space with us and present with us this evening. I'm Christina Weber, founder of Wedeepen, and I am so excited to share the first virtual KASH codes guided by Daniela Gil this evening with you all. We had a few questions submitted ahead of time, so we'll make sure that we go through some of those questions. Tonight's experience is on Facebook Live. The link is in the chat. Feel free if you'd like to share the energy of January 11th, 1/11 with your friends and family. Please post that on your Facebook pages. Also, if you would like to, in your name, you're welcome to change your name and include your Instagram or Twitter or some other way to reach you afterwards within your name tag. And tonight's experience will go to YouTube tomorrow. So anything that is heard today, if you want to remember it, share it with others, that link will be available afterwards. I am excited to pass this off over to Daniela. Thank you for being here with us this evening. And the world could definitely use some energy. We actually got to share the Akashic Records in Clubhouse yesterday. So now we're together on Zoom and get to see each other. So thank you all for being here. And Daniela, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you, Christina. I am so happy to be here, and I'm just taking a moment to connect with all of you. Look at all of your beautiful faces. Aw. Yay. So, through a show of hands, thanks, Cindy. Can I see if it's anyone's first experience with an Akashic reading? Oh, beautiful. Okay, so we have a few first timers here. So the Akashic Records are the subtle energetic imprint of everything that's ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything could happen. I think of them as like the knowing. I'm just going to ask that you make sure you remain muted, just because I'm hearing some sound. Thank you. So I think of them as like the knowing of like the Big Bang. There's like the experience of all that is, all that could be, and then there is the awareness, the remembering, the knowing of it all. And that is the Akashic Records. The word Akasha is the Sanskrit word for ethers or space, which is like the primordial element, what existed and gave rise to the Big Bang. So Akashic Records, it's like the record of everything in ethers or space. And I feel like while we're in this human incarnation, we don't necessarily have access to the Akashic Records in their totality, because the Akashic Records are the knowing of infinity and eternity. And if the human mind tried to grasp that, it would just be incomprehensible. Like, our minds are designed to make sense of this seemingly limited and linear human experience. So there's really no way that we could expand to that capacity to hold the totality of the Akashic Records. In many ways, the Akashic Records are like, they're like the culmination of all perspectives, like everything that could ever be, everything that ever has been, that is the Akashic Records. So they're like a very, very high perspective. And I feel like while we are in this human incarnation, we can come into what I call an elevated, expanded state of consciousness, where we can transcend some of the limitations of our human mind and all of its expectations, memories, beliefs, judgments, everything that goes along with having this human personality and this human life, and see things from a higher lens and connect more intimately with like the knowing of the psychic realm. It's like we all have access to this intuitive well of wisdom. We all have access to this higher perspective. And for me, accessing the Akashic Records is very intentionally and consciously coming into a state of consciousness that allows us to become one with this higher perspective. And then from that place, we can ask questions and we can receive insight that perhaps if we were just looking at things through our everyday perspective, like through our minds, we wouldn't necessarily have access to. It's like we're so accustomed to seeing things in a certain way, but we can come into this meditative state and like, oh wow, it's like that state that you can touch upon, or I personally have touched upon before I started accessing the Akashic Records in like medicine ceremonies or in like really profound, deep breathwork ceremonies, where you receive those sort of breakthroughs and new perspectives. And more than that, more than insight, I feel like accessing the Akashic Records helps connect us with divine love. I don't know what else to call it. It's like this endless compassion for everyone and everything. There is a recognition from that perspective that everything that is occurring in our lives is serving us in some way, and it has a reason for being. And there's also the recognition that everybody is an aspect of self and an extension of self, and that it is really one consciousness that flows through all. And there's also a remembering that is offered around the quantum nature of this experience of life, the way in which so much is possible for us here, and the way in which our minds and everything that we have experienced so far has us formulate these beliefs which then in turn limit what is possible for us. But the Akashic Records can shed light on these beliefs and help liberate us from them. We can see them for what they are, and we can start to recognize when we are behaving according to these limiting beliefs, and then choose to behave differently, and therefore choose to create a new experience for ourselves and for everybody. And I feel like that is of utmost importance at this time, as so much is coming to light. And something really big that I see arising in the collective human psyche is this healing of everything that has been in regards to how we have related to one another and how we have treated each other. If you look at human history, we have committed so many atrocities at the hands of each other. And in many ways, the human psyche it's like very hurt and very traumatized and has these certain beliefs around human nature and how human beings are. And then we tend to project those onto the people around us, onto our world leaders, onto other groups that we believe are so different from us. And we inadvertently end up perpetuating these stories. And right now we're coming into a time where there is so much light streaming onto the planet. Light is essentially awareness. We're becoming aware of so much more and aware of what has always been there. And through this awareness, we can choose this new way. But if we still have these blinders on around like, this is how people are, this is how humanity is, then it's going to be a lot harder to contribute to the creation of a new society, of a new way of relating. So I feel in many ways, the Akashic Records help us bring forth a lot of compassion, a lot of forgiveness, help us release resentment, and help us become aware of how perhaps our wounding from the past is being replayed in the moment, and how we are creating these relationships that are not the highest possibility for us. I feel that a lot of what we're seeing unfolding at the planet at this time that is like so hard for us is related to the state of our relationships, our mistrust of one another, the antagonism, all the like unprocessed injustice and rage and anger, all of that is coming up. And I feel like we create the most effective, efficient, and safe healing container for all of that to arise and be reconciled when we are viewing it all from a higher perspective, instead of the perspective of what was and what has been, instead of the perspective that is so tainted by our trauma. Oftentimes it's like we're viewing things from the level of what we have experienced in the past, And then we can think that it is our intuition speaking to us. But there's more. I'm just going to look at the chat box. Okay, how do we define higher? So I feel like here's my personal definition. There's my perspective as Daniela, and it's like my mind, my beliefs, my judgments, my expectations. And when I come into a higher perspective, it's a perspective that encompasses other people's perspectives as well. So it's like a perspective that takes into account how other people are experiencing life. And to give like a personal example, like if I have a challenge in my relationship and I like so think that like he has done something wrong, he has done something to hurt me, that's my perspective. But I can come into a higher perspective where I disidentify momentarily to the maximum degree that I am able to in that moment with my perspective, so that I can then see a higher perspective, which will reveal to me his experience, which will reveal to me like the innocence behind how he's behaving. It'll show me how he is actually reflecting parts of my ego that I may not want to see. It'll show me how whatever challenge we may be having in our relationship is actually serving me. It's helping me create greater resilience. It's helping me become aware of parts of myself that perhaps I've been avoiding looking at, because many of us have been conditioned to want to see ourselves as good and as right. So when we have that desire, it can be hard to like really look at the shadow. And that higher perspective helps us see the shadow from a place of like unconditional love. It's like we're really protected when we look through that higher perspective, because there's no shame, there's no blame. It's like sometimes we like receive reflections from others, but they may have some blame to them, like some finger pointing, and then like we're naturally going to resist it. But when we can look at ourselves from a higher perspective and we see our shadows, we see like our shortcomings, what you might call a flaw, but we see it from a lens of like unconditional love and compassion, and then it becomes a lot easier to see it. So higher perspective for me is like rising above my perspective, seeing more than what like I initially want to look at and what I initially see and what I initially believe, and allowing my consciousness to expand to include the perspectives of others. Okay, so in this experience together, I'm going to connect with everybody who's here present on this call through a prayer. I like to say this prayer that I channeled a few years ago. And the first part is out loud, the second part is silent. And then at the end, I'll announce when the records are open and all of you will get to ask questions. Sometimes a message for the group comes through and I'll share that. I would love to invite you all to receive what it is that resonates with you, whatever it is that feels that serves you, and allow everything else that comes through to move through you. If it doesn't feel resonant with you, knowing that ultimately you are the highest authority and the one who gets to be discerning around what is true and real for you. Oftentimes people think that Akashic record readings are the highest perspective or the ultimate perspective, but there is no highest perspective that can be communicated and lived through by the human being, because the highest perspective is the culmination of all perspectives. And we can't have an individualized identity and be embodying the highest perspective. We always have to have some sort of element of personality, of individuation, of story. So everything that I am transmitting is still coming with an element of human story. It is not the highest perspective. It is simply my best attempt at connecting to what it is I see and feel and sense, whatever it is that in many ways feels to me like is shown to me. Like I feel like these beings show me things like images, words, and then me communicating them. I'd love to invite you to not get too caught up in the words of what is shared or like the intellectual mind stuff, and really let yourself receive the energy. The way that I experience these readings is that they are transmission for all of you that actually help support you in activating your access to the Akashic Records. And I feel that that's ultimately my dharma. Like, my purpose here on the planet is not really to give Akashic record readings, it's to activate other people in accessing higher perspective themselves. That's what I'm here to do. So that is like the ultimate intention behind this reading. Yeah, I love the shares in the chat box. So are there any questions before I say the prayer and dive in around just the experience? I'll open it up to your Akashic questions after the prayer. Cool. Okay. Spirit, support me in coming into an elevated, expanded state of consciousness so that I may be one with your perspective. Set aside the totality of my personality. So that I may serve as a clear channel for your divine loving guidance and knowing. Allow me to see all who are present on this call as they are seen in the light of the Akashic Records. And help me to know them as they are known in the mind of spirit. Enable me to share all of the communication of their masters, teachers, and loved ones with integrity, clarity, and love. And so it is. The Akashic Records are now open. So I'm going to first ask if there's a message for the group. So the first thing that I saw for this group specifically was, it was like part of the reason why we are here together at this time, and part of what will be received and what is being transmitted is an energy, a knowing, a remembering that will support you in relinquishing righteousness, attachment to righteousness, so that you can further awaken the energies of the heart. And the energies of the heart are what will guide you in the direction of where it is that you actually want to be heading, and will bring to your life the gifts that you are wanting and desiring. There's like a blossoming of love here occurring within our collective human family, and within this group specifically, that is hindered, that is blocked at times by desires to be right. If we want to be right, therefore someone else has to be wrong. And that is, it's like, yeah, it's relinquishing the ideas of right and wrong. And that doesn't mean that things aren't up for being changed right now, that things aren't up for being shifted. We are so acutely aware right now of all of the human dynamics, the relational dynamics, the way in which we lead, the way in which we govern one another, the way in which we relate to each other, all of these societal structures are currently, we're becoming so aware of the ways in which they do not work, and they do not necessarily serve our highest good. And in many ways, they're like perpetuating this sort of older paradigm way of being, where we don't really trust each other, where we believe that we are completely separate from one another and therefore act from places of like greed and aggression and like, I matter, but you don't. There is this collective awakening on the planet, and not a single being on this planet at this time is immune. Like, it's not like there's one group of people that is evolving spiritually and then another group that isn't. Everybody is at their own rate and at their own pace. And some people just have a lot more to move through. And it's really important to like hold compassion for them, because that's what helps hold space and accelerate the process. But there's a confusion, a distortion around what it means to be compassionate. It does not necessarily mean to to tolerate or to accept from a powerless space, from a victim type of space. There is a divine acceptance that needs to be present in order to facilitate change, but it's the acceptance that the way things are and have been have served a purpose and were meant to be. Through our resistance, we can inadvertently perpetuate more of what was and what currently is that we do not desire for our future. And our acceptance, our divine acceptance, is what allows the energy to begin to flow so that we can create something new, because we need to create something new from a foundation of love. We need to start creating from love. Like, I want something new, not because I hate this, because this is awful, because you're all terrible, but because I love humanity, because I forgive humanity, because I have so much compassion for everybody, because I'm seeing what is actually occurring, which is people playing out their wounds, people playing out their pain. And it's never any more than that. It's like, sometimes I see from a Akashic perspective that true evil, the way that we might have like believe it exists, doesn't actually exist in that way. It's just extreme unconsciousness and extreme pain and woundedness, and like completely believing in the idea of separation, like so completely that you entirely disconnect from the world around you. But that's all that evil, or what we might call wrongdoing, actually is. And from the perspective of the person behaving in that way, they're behaving in the way that is in their highest interest, the best way to be, the best way to behave. So from their perspective, they're not inherently doing anything wrong. So like, who is to judge? It's like, we just have this world of people that are needing to be rehabilitated, including ourselves. And it can be very tempting at times to come into ideas of mistrust and divisiveness and antagonism. And there's a validity to the mistrust, but allow yourself to work with that mistrust from an Akashic perspective, where you recognize that there's more beneath the surface that is occurring, and yet there's nobody to hate or condemn or judge because of it. There is no actual enemy. We are one human family here on the planet. And be mindful around how the stories that you can become convinced of around what is happening in the world impact what you project onto humanity at large, or onto our world leaders. or onto like other groups of people, or just anyone and everyone, your loved ones, your family, because our minds are so interconnected and so powerful that what we put out there has impact. We're all co-creating this experience together, and it's not that it simply is. There's more to it, and there's a way in which each and every one of us is contributing to what is currently occurring. There's also an invitation here for you to reclaim your energy by becoming so mindful of how and where you have been directing it, and how that either energizes you or drains you of energy. Pay attention to what you're focusing on and what you're feeding, and notice what it is bringing forth within you. Is it bringing forth the highest aspects of you? Like, is it inspiring you to be in service, to be kind, to have fun, to like enjoy your life? Or is it spiraling you into places of like misery or despair, or like anger or hatred? We want to feel everything that is real and present and alive for us, especially in response to this collective healing, this collective purging, this collective unveiling that we are currently undergoing. And we also don't necessarily want to like feed these emotions. You want to feel them, but not feed them. And sometimes when we feel a lot of fear or mistrust, our minds can, in a sense, fool us into believing that it's because something is occurring, like someone has something planned, like someone is up to something. And we can create these stories based on what we are feeling, yet that isn't necessarily inherently true. And in some ways, this can be a confusing time for gifted intuitives, because each and every one of us is going through our own individual healing, and we are all susceptible to like different emotions, different states of being and of perceiving the world, and what is going on both within us and around us. And when certain emotions come up to be healed, to be reconciled, we can then create stories of, oh, I feel fear because this is happening or this is going to happen. I feel mistrust of other people because this is happening or this is going to happen. But a lot of it is just based on our history, which is like more like if you really feel into it, it's horrendous. The fact that we have like murdered one another, that we've had genocides, that we've had the Holocaust, that we've had world wars, the fact that we've had like these abusive, tyrannical dictatorships, the way we've like treated each other. We've had slavery. We like have normalized robbing each other and raping each other and hurting each other. And even like the way in which corporations like abuse the land and like do not, pay their people well. It's like, whoa, that is so up in the collective human psyche right now. And with all the light that's streaming onto the planet, we're becoming aware of like how painful it is and how dysfunctional it all is. And all of our emotions related to it are coming up. We're like collectively waking up to like what we've created and what we've done. And the ultimate message that I hear over and over again in the Akashic Records is that there's no one to blame for it. There's not one person to blame. Everybody who behaves a certain way behaves that way because they have been conditioned or created to do so. That's how they've been treated. That's what they've been told and taught is right. It's just their worldview. So this is a collective effort, and we all get to take responsibility for our part without any blame or shame for anybody. And it's important not to confuse taking full responsibility with blaming or shaming. Like, oh, if I take responsibility, that means it's my fault. You should take responsibility because it's your fault. It's each and every one of us should take 100% responsibility and recognize that it's nobody's fault. no one here to blame or to shame or to hate. And it can be very tempting at times to show up as the very thing that we judge or are resisting or despising when it comes to like that war type of energy, which many of us are feeling at this time, like in the US and just throughout the world for various different reasons in many different ways. So I'm reading this question here from Eckhart. Are we all evolving towards the individual meaning of the records? And Cosmic Lab says, that's a good question. It's interesting how the mystics and saints all around the world repeat the power of I don't know. I love that that was brought forth to this session, the power of I don't know. That is what allows us access to it's such a paradox. The power of I don't know is what allows us access to other perspectives and to what you could call a higher perspective. And then from those perspectives, you get to toy around with new perspectives or new things to supposedly know and try them on and see how they work for you, see how they inspire you, see what kind of life they create for you. Let me see if I understand that question. Are we all evolving towards the individual meaning of the records? It's, as you ask that question, the way that I see it is, well, the way that I see our evolution in many ways is I see the Big Bang and I see how there was initially there was just pure presence, pure potentiality. And this is like my idea from an experience that I personally had in like a deep meditative state. And from that pure presence, pure potentiality, there became a thought or an inkling of something more, which then created the Big Bang. And in that meditative experience, I felt like part of the story of the Big Bang, which like this expansion, which created all these separate selves. Yet with the evolution, there would be a recognition that it is actually one consciousness flowing through all these different aspects of self. And through our continued evolution across space and time and eternity and infinity, there would be a remembering that there'd be such like a deep remembering of our oneness with all that there could no longer be separation. There could no longer be this belief or this continuation of all the separate beings and all the separate planets and galaxies. And then it's like a return to that oneness, to that like one spec. That's the way I've seen it. So if that's what your question is asking, I do see a merging of like the collective human or Akashic records and the individual Akashic records, because oftentimes Akashic perspective does reveal that the differentiation is not as clear as we think. Like the whole idea of past lives from Akashic perspective, it doesn't necessarily look like this one soul has like this one life and then this next life and then this next life. It actually appears far more like interconnected and like intermingled than that. Wow, I love this question. Can we move into a world of light heaven on earth, or do we need the duality? both. We absolutely can move into experience of light heaven on earth, and the duality that we have experienced and are experiencing is what allows us to recognize it as light heaven. The duality takes new form, and the darkness takes new form. Yet it feels like the destiny that is most likely for planet Earth is the creation of a harmonious world where each and every being is behaving from a place of awareness of their interconnectedness with all. And that, in many ways, could be defined as an experience of light heaven. But the duality is what allows the separation, because with only the light, we are that eternal, infinite presence that is actually nothing other than pure presence. That's what pure light would be. And the duality of light and dark is what gives rise to like space. And space is what allowed for the Big Bang, the experience of all of these planets and all of these beings and all of these stories, of which will always have different expressions. And in some ways, different expressions are a form of duality. Anything that has separation is going to have duality in it. Yet, I do feel like in this experience on Earth, we can and will create what some could call more of a light heaven experience. I'm just going to take a little pause for a moment and request quiet. Okay. Okay, sorry, it's just like really noisy out there. Okay, the next question. I recently saw that the FEMA names Los Angeles County as the most dangerous area in the US. What the bleep? Well, I didn't read the report, but while I know I'm deeply safe and whole spiritually, what wisdom do the records have to share with us about these kind of potential dangers? Time to relocate for some of us. So I don't know I have no idea what FEMA is, but I feel like the reason that may have been predicted is because of likelihood of earthquakes and perhaps wildfires or other like natural disasters. Dangerous area in the US. I don't think that conclusion was based on like crime. I asked like how did they name it, and it just felt like likelihood of natural disasters and the types and severity of natural disasters and how much damage that could create to the infrastructure and the way things that flow. It feels like there is a likelihood and possibility in the years to come for us to see more and more natural disasters, and this will simply be a natural part of the cleansing and awakening process of the planet. It's like It's like the planet's immune system. Like the earth has an immune system just as the human body does. We are so similar because we are one and the same. And the planet's immune system will be kicking in and clearing a lot of the present energies that appear pathogenic in many ways. Just like our immune system kicks in and clears pathogens from our bodies. And that could occur in the form of natural disasters, but it feels like, although it does have to do with certain lines, like I know earthquakes happen on certain tectonic plate lines and can be predicted in that way, yet there's something around actually the energetic flow of where energies are flowing and when there needs to be a major type of disruption. And that's where certain natural disasters will occur. Where it's so interesting. It's like we don't think of natural disasters as healing, but what I heard was where there needs to be healing, there could potentially be a natural disaster to catalyze the healing. I think it's more important now than ever before to not listen to all the noise around us, of the media, of the news, of other people's perspectives, and spend more time with our own spirits, with the wisdom of our own soul. Nothing else that you could ever be told could ever compare to the wisdom of your soul. You will be led to exactly where it is you are meant to be and will be most supported. Listen, ask, and do not be afraid at this time to let go of the old. And sometimes letting go of the old can mean relocating. And then there's like the experience of living through a natural disaster doesn't necessarily mean that you've like done something wrong, like, oh, I should have known, I should have moved, like my intuition should have told me. You're destined to live through the experiences that are most relevant for you. And trust that whatever you experience here in this lifetime is only supporting you and serving you in some way. Life cannot be any other way. It has a divine perfection to it that is beyond what the human mind could ever possibly grasp or make sense of. So in this day and age, with all this change around us, it is really important to trust and to surrender and to open not only to what is, but also to what could be. I see this like sort of twist or glitch in the collective human psyche around the idea of danger and the idea of safety. And this attachment to safety, this preoccupation with safety has limited us in so many ways. It keeps us from pursuing and realizing and living into what our souls know is possible. It distracts us. It keeps us playing in a very limited way in this whole like earth game, this whole earth experience. So there's an invitation to release fear and instead connect with the guidance of your soul. And let yourself trust that. And like, there's like, really don't be afraid to like let everything go that currently is if you feel that call. Like, don't let your mind start to interfere, like, oh, but I love it, like this about my job or that about my job, or like I love this about my home or that about my home, if you're consistently feeling that call to create something new, then that is for a reason. A lot will be changing in the years to come, and a lot of unexpected changes will be coming our way. It feels like in many ways this whole corona and quarantine was merely an initial initiation of sorts, but far greater and grander changes are upon us. And there is still so much fear within the collective human psyche that when these words are shared, it can bring up a lot of fear. It can be interpreted through the lens of fear, like, what? More change? Like, that was it? But yet there's actually a lot to celebrate within what is coming because of what is created on the other side of this change and what we ultimately get to birth as a result of these initiations, which are all just these perfectly created experiences to facilitate our awakening and to give us exactly what we need when we need it, when we are ready for it. The more trust that we have in life, the easier these years will be to come, and we will find much, much to celebrate and to rejoice in. Thank you for that question. Okay. I'm just receiving all the private messages I received as well. Okay, so one of them was, I worry that the future is doom and gloom for me. Is it not? Can we move into a brighter future? I have anxiety because of my autism. Like the moment I asked, I worry that the future is doom and gloom for me, is it not? Like the voice that I heard was like, no, 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 like absolutely not, no way, no, like not, absolutely not. Your future is not doom and gloom. It feels like there's been challenge around creating, or not even creating, but connecting to the peace and the presence that is available to you in this now moment through fully inhabiting your body. What I'm seeing is some of the energy is like it's a bit dispersed and a bit scattered, and it doesn't feel safe to find home in the body. But through the finding of home in the body, there's like a relaxation. And then there becomes like a rooting into what is. It's like, okay, in this present moment, I'm in this home. I'm in my body, and all is well. It's like it may not feel like all is well, but that is the mind. It feels like there could be a disempowering relationship with the mind, but that actually heals when you give the mind less of your focus. I don't personally agree or resonate with certain labels or diagnoses, especially like autistic or bipolar or any of that. What I find with autism is that it always expresses itself very differently, and it is actually a heightened sensitivity that has people relate and perceive the world very differently. And because of like the nature of where humanity is at right now, if we're super, super sensitive and perceiving the world through like just heightened sensitivity and like heightened access to intuition and just like our energy, like kind of functioning in different ways, then it can feel like a very scary world and it can create a lot of anxiety. And then the person could, because of some sort of diagnosis, think, oh, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the way I relate to the world. And that is not true at all. There's like a blessing and a gift inherent within perceiving the world in that way and having that heightened level of sensitivity. And many people that are born into the world in this way do not have mentors and guides to teach them how to like work their gifts. And instead they are crippled by their gifts. And it feels like that is what is creating a lot of the anxiety. And it'll be really supportive to begin to value your unique perspectives and your unique way of relating the world and relating to the world and not thinking of it as like an issue. Like I have a friend who has been, he says he's autistic and he's been diagnosed autistic and he's super blunt and like honest. And that's perceived as like a problem. Like you can't be that way. That's not the way society is. But it's like just this unique way of relating to things where he's not controlled by like societal norms in that way. And it's actually a gift. And just make sure you guys stay muted because I can't see who's not muted. Oh, actually, I can't mute people right now. The more we problematize our unique way of being, the more it'll actually become a problem for us. The more that we can glorify it, the more that we start to become aware of the gifts and blessings within it, and then it can become a positive in our lives. Life, God doesn't make any mistakes in how it creates people. And every way of being, every way of perceiving the world is necessary and relevant. And when we believe that somebody's way of believing or perceiving is somehow like a dysfunction or an accident or something that has gone wrong, it really diminishes that person's ability to relate to themselves in a way where they are recognizing and living into their unique gifts. Everybody has so much value for this experience of life, every single human being, especially those who see the world through a very different lens, who experience it very differently. And it is not surprising that with a heightened level of sensitivity, there would be a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of gloom and doom. It's because there are currents of that moving through the collective human psyche. And those currents have been gaining momentum. They've always been there, but they've been gaining momentum in the years to come. So it'll be helpful to like reclaim your energy and allow yourself to just be fully present in your body. Be really mindful of the thoughts that you feed in your mind or the way in which you feed certain sensations or emotions. You want to like feel them, surrender to them, embrace them, but do not feed them. Do not amplify them by making up stories about them. And start to practice meeting any sort of fear, gloom, doom type of thoughts or feelings with just full body breaths, like feeling your breath in the fullness of your body and feeling reality as it is arising right now in the physical. Because a lot of this is rooted in like the mental. Well, I know that we're at the end of our time together. And I want to thank you for all of your questions and everything that you've contributed to this group experience. And I also want to express my gratitude to all of you for being here. So thank you. And I'm going to take a moment to close the records, and then I'm going to share with all of you. Thank you to our masters, teachers, and loved ones. Thank you for Akashic insight. Thank you for all of the healing energy that came through. May it all serve us and the lives of all connected to us. And so it is. The Akashic Records are now closed. Amen. The Akashic Records are now closed. Amen. The Akashic Records are now closed. Amen. So if any of you are interested in learning how to access Akashic perspective yourself, I have a training that starts in February, and I would love to share with you. And I'm also available for one-on-one sessions, which are radically different from these group sessions. In these group sessions, I really like to speak to the group energy and not necessarily the individual experience, but the one-on-one readings are all about your specific Akashic records and your individual experience. I wasn't sure if you were going to share, Christina.
I definitely am going to share. What a beautiful experience. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and joining us. A couple of things to note is, first off, after this experience, you're going to receive an email with a survey. And the survey is about this evening. It will take you about 3-4 minutes. Please take the time to complete it, provide us with feedback. This is the first KASH Codes, the first virtual one. The next one is going to be on February 8th, and we'd love to take all of your feedback into account so we can bring that into the next experience on Monday, February 8th. Moving forward, KASH Codes will be the second Monday monthly. So please plan to join in and tune in for that. A couple up and coming experiences. So this Wednesday is Omega Male. Omega Male is guided by Daniel Mackenzie. It's a men's group for women too. So come in and join us for that. We have 2 special guests, a TED speaker, and also a woman who is organizing for white people, for Black people, and they are both part of that experience. So Wednesday, Omega Male. Next Wednesday, the following Wednesday, is the Great Love Debate. It's an interactive experience here on Zoom as well, with reality stars, and we talk about dating. We actually debate, why is everyone still single? It's a fun interactive experience. And then the 27th is Yes End. It's the seventh Yes End, guided by Amari Anderson. And at Yes End, we choose questions that are usually left off the table or not discussed. We call it questions and conversations that challenge the status quo. And January 27th question is, are gender roles necessary to keep society intact? So please join us for that one. We also have Indy was here this evening. Indy is another Deepen guide. Indy is the guide of Mind Sports. The next Mind Sports will be February 3rd. We're still debating on the topic of which one is it veganism versus meat eaters? That might be the experience we go forth with. So please come in and check out the schedule. Also, Deepen is a community of people who desire to have healthy, meaningful, loving relationships. We prioritize growth. That's growth for the individual, growth for a couple, and growth for the collective. We meet on, there's lots of chatter in a WhatsApp group, which you're welcome to join. I'll drop that link in the chat here before we sign off, as well as a Facebook group. And now that Clubhouse is a pretty popular place for people to hang and share conversations, we're also in Clubhouse. So please feel free to come in. The community is open to you. We're open-minded, all-inclusive, so please come on and join us. And the last thing I'll share with you is January 30th is the 8th annual Feminine Weapon Day. Feminine Weapon Day has been an event we've been producing for, again, the past 8 years. And throughout the years, we've raised over $60,000 for children of abuse, extreme poverty, and human trafficking. And this year's theme is Facing the Shadow. So we're actually going to look into the whole collective shadow and the collective darkness and also the collective light together and journey through that together. So please, all these experiences are listed at wedeepen.com. So grateful to have all of you here with us today. I'm available if you have any questions. I'm at c@wedeepen.com. If you need to reach out to Daniela, feel free to reach out to me if you don't have access to Daniela, and I'll make sure to get a message over to you. And please look out for that survey. And thank you all for tuning in this evening. Before I close out this space, is there anything that anyone would like to share or say?
Hi.
Hi, Ben.
How you doing? Daniela, that was really great. I really enjoyed listening to you. Yeah, sorry I was late. I was at another thing, but I just want to say, like, Daniela, that was really amazing, and I'd love to, learn more about what you do as well, because you're a very calming person, and I just recovered from an anxiety attack just before I joined, so I'm just like still a little bit out of it, but but I really enjoyed your work. Thank you, Danielle. I really love to keep in touch with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. It was such a pleasure to have you and to connect with you and share with you. And I really hope to share more with you in the future. And
I mean, I'd love to stay in touch with you. Would you be open to that, or?
yeah, you can send me an email after this. I'll send you my email address.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to share that everything changes because I used to have panic attacks all the time. And now I'm pretty, like, I used to have them all the time. And I used to be medicated for it. And very different experience now.
Yeah, like it's just, COVID is really like brought a excessive amount of anxiety because I mean, I'm worried about the future and like, whether I'll go back to a happy life after this, because I'm an actor and I do theater and film all the time, and I rely on my community in New York City to keep me company, keep me busy, and to give me all that what's life's worth. And like I just get afraid that the things that I've been doing before COVID will not exist anymore. And like it's hard for me to face that. And but I keep telling myself, be optimistic, be positive. I really want to be in a bright future. So it's really hard for me right now because like like I just worry that I won't make it through it. But but it's just I will.
Thank you for letting us see you, Ben.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Welcome. I'm really glad to be part of the community. I took a risk and signed up online yesterday for the dating salon, and I'm having a great experience. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this evening. And Daniela is going to drop her email address in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and play some music and send us off. And so thank you all for being here.
Love you guys. Thank you.